that I'm making, we are going to make a video about classes, and for my case I'm going to be using an IDE called dev C++, that's dev bloodshed. So we are going to come to the console application, then okay, then save, replace. I want to replace it. Then we shall have a working space like this. So to begin with, I'm going to include using name space, because using namespace std, because we are going to be using the standard version of it. So I'm going to eliminate this comment like that. Then since we are talking about classes, I'm going to create a class about students. So I'm going to create a class, then I name it student. Then from here I'm going to open the curly braces. To begin with, a class can be described as a template of objects, or we can say a class describes objects. And for our case here we have student, so our student is going to the term student is going to be our object. So an object contains two things. We have the behaviors and then the state. The behavior, what we mean by the behavior and the state is what the object has, and then the behavior is what the object does. So for our case here, we shall look at the student, and then we look at the behaviors of the student, followed by the state of the student. So to begin with, what does the student have? Student has a name, so we shall come here and we give it a string name, because every student has a name. Then we come to another thing, which is going to be the course. Every student has a course or a major, so for our case we are going to call it course. Then we come to the integer. Students have age. So for now we are going to stop here, and then we come to the next thing. The next thing we are going to look at is going to be the function. In this, since we are dealing with a class always has a function, so we can include a function in this, which will be void, then let me call it student details. Then we open it and close it. So in our main function we are going to invoke this, or to call out this function. So in this function we are going to have since we are dealing with the student details, we are going to have this as calling out the details of the students. So we shall say name is, then we shall have to call out the name of the student, which is going to be this. Then we end the line, terminate, then come to the next line. So since we have three, we have the name, we have the course, and then we have the age. Allow me copy out to this. to the next line. So when I copy this, bring it down, then I come and I change out something a bit. So this is going to be edge, and also this we shall have the course. Then here we have course, then finally edge. So these are some of the characteristics of a student, and we have just created a function, and this is going to be called in the main function. The main function is right here. So I'm going to come to the main function, then I create out an object. So actually I made a mistake, a small mistake up here. When we are dealing with the classes, always we have to make it a capital letter. So come down here, then I create an object which is student, then the object is going to be student. Let me call it student1. So I'm going to come and I give all the names of the details of the student, the first student. So we shall have student1 dot name, and then we shall have student1 dot name equals, let me give it that, then terminate, come to the next one. Actually this has to be student1. So we come to the next one, which is student1 dot course. Also this is going to be equal to, let me give it computer science. Then come to the edge, which is student1 dot edge equals 20. So if you're to look in, when we are dealing with strings, we need to put this in quotes. So come to this, put it in quotes, which is that. Also here we need to put this, since it's a string, we put it in quotes. Also here quotes, like that. Then as you can see, we have already created our object, which is student1, and we have given student1 the name, which is Macho. Then we have given the student1 the course, which is that. So the next step is going to be calling out our function. Our function is student details. So we are going to say, to call our function, we are going to say student1 dot student details. And this will help, and this is going to help us print out the name of the student, to print out the course, and also to print out the age of the student. So when we compile and run, we expect to get the name of the student, the course, and then the age. What's missing up there? This is a string. So if you are to look in, when we are creating a class, usually it's by default that the class we have created, in case we don't specify that it's private, public, or protected, the default state of our class is going to be private. So by what we mean by private, we are not actually, we do not have access to the variables in the class. So to be able to access our variables, which is the name, the course, and then the age, we shall have to first declare public to this class. So if we add public to this class, we shall be able to access the values of the class. So when we compile and run, we shall have to get the details of the student. So we are having something of this kind, student details. What's not happening? Compile and run. So these are the details that we are expected to have on board. We have the name, the course, and then we have the age. One thing I want to talk about is the state of the class. If in case we do not declare any class here, any state of the class here, like private, public, and then the protected, usually the class comes with a default state, which is private. And what we mean by private, we do not have access to the members of the class unless we use the getters and setters. And then what we mean by public is that you can access the variables of the class, or the characteristics, or the attributes of the class wherever and whenever you need it out of the class. So for us to access these values, we had to first declare this class public so that we can access the values down here. And then we to call out this function, we had to declare student1 dot student details, then we call out the function. So we can create another object which is going to be student2 down here. So we shall need to start with student, then which is student2. Then allow me copy out to this down here like this. Then I paste it down here. So I'm going to change out to this value, which is student2, student2. You're going to give different values here. So age, let me make it 25. Then the course, information, technology, then the name, let's give it a name of Ivan. So similarly, as we got to these values, the previous values, which was student1 Macho, student2 is going to be Ivan, then the courses are going to differ, which is information technology and then computer science. Then we shall have the different ages, which is 22 for the first student and then 25 for the second student. So when we compile and run, again we expect to get the values as previously. We expect to get the values of the students, that's to say the name, the course, and then the age. by invoking the function in the global variable. So when we compile and run, actually I missed out to put student 2, so compile and run, we expect to get the details of the 2 students. So as you can see, we have the details of the first student with the course, which is that. These are the details of the first student, then details of the second student. So this is all about the class. So we are going to come to the constructor. The constructor helps in case you have multiple students to be entered into the system, and you do not need to go on typing all this information down for each and every student. So you can use a constructor to minimize the time needed for that. And there are 3 major rules that we need to follow while creating a constructor. The first one is that a constructor must always be private, and then the next one is going to be that the constructor usually takes up the name of the class, and then lastly the constructor has no return value. So we are going to create our constructor down here, which is going to be student. As we said, the constructor takes up the name of the class, so we are going to take up the name of the class, which is student, and then in this we are going to input our values. So we shall have, allow me do that first. So in here we shall have the name of the student, which is going to be, the data type of the variables. So the first variable is going to be string, and that's for the name, then comma, the next data type was still a string, and this was for the course, comma, then we have the third data type, which was int, and this was for age. So this is what we call a constructor. So the next step here is going to be this. We have name to be equal to the name in our constructor, which is that. Then the next one was course will be equal to course terminate. Then we come to age to equal to age, like that. So with this we have already created our constructor. So the next step is to come and see how we can deal with the constructor. So with this we shall have our first student. Let me first comment out to these values, like that. Comment it out, then also this, comment it out, like that. Actually we don't need to comment out this, we need it. So we shall say this is equal to this will be equal to the name of the constructor, which is student1 is equal to student. Then into bracket we are going to need to input these values which we had down here, which is the first one was the name, so we shall get the name, input it, then comma. The next one in our constructor was the course, so we are going to come and copy out to the course, like that. Then lastly we had the age, which was 22. So also for the second student we had this, so we are going to say equals student2 equals student, open the bracket. So we shall have the name, which is that, input it, comma, we shall have also the course, which is that, and then lastly we have the age, which is 25. So with this we expect to get the results as initially, because initially we got the values of the first student, that was the name, the course, and then the age. So after creating our constructor, we expect to get the same values as we did initially. So when we compile and run, you can see that we have gotten the same values as we got as earlier. So the first student had these details, and then also the second student had these details. So as you can see, this is the details of the second student, and then these are the details of the first student. And now we can eliminate this from our work. Then also we eliminate this. As you can see, constructors help us a lot to minimize the space and the time taken to create the details of our objects. As you can see, we have 4 lines for 2 students. Initially we had about 8 to 9 lines for the 2 students, but now we have 4 lines. So this proves that constructors can be of help in creating details for multiple students and minimizing the time taken. So see you in the next video.